Hi guys, Dreamcraft Bows here. Welcome to my another video. Today I'll be building a notch flatbow and explaining the whole process step by step. As you can see, I'm working with a stave, which is the piece of wood obtained from splitting and processing logs. In a description I'll drop a link to the video showing how to get to this stage, as well as to a few other complementary videos. Nevertheless, tips shared by me in the video will be helpful for any kind of bow build. My stave has already been seasoned and dried to approximately 9%. It's nearly 69 inches long, with nice, pretty thick growth rings. The one end of the piece is slightly crooked, with a dose of character. It might cause some problems in the later stages, but it's an acceptable defect for sure. The back of the stave is a single intact growth ring on its whole length, and it has to be like that when it comes to stave bows. Any serious ring valuations may be dangerous. On many staves you don't even have to chase the grain, usually it's enough to remove the bark carefully. Chasing the grain is necessary when it comes to the woods with sapwood that has to be removed, or staves with poor quality rings on the top. Before we'll get into the work, let me emphasize here the importance of using safety precautions. We have to remember about working carefully on each stage of the build, especially using tools like hatchets and knives. I recommend learning about it first. Also, the use of gloves and goggles, especially during tilling and roughing out, is needed. During any works related with creating dust, a bowyer should wear a mask to protect himself from sometimes toxic substances. Okay, we can start now. I'm starting with laying out a design. The design has to be adapted to the particular wood piece and species. An European ashwood tends to have compression problems, therefore it needs the limbs of the bow to be wider and longer, to be able to deal with the stress. The better the wood is, the more stressing design it can handle, like recurves, deep-belly long bows, or just higher poundage bows. On this particular piece, I'm applying flat and quite wide-limbed bow. It's pretty safe design, which is also a good choice for beginners to increase the chance of success. I'm starting with determining the exact middle of the stave. This bow is gonna be symmetrical. I'm applying stiff grip bow with handle and fades, slightly over 3 inches long each. Then I'm marking similar sections on both limbs and determining a taper. The limbs at widest are slightly over 2 inches. All wood imperfections should be taken into account while designing a bow. This particular piece luckily has no knots. Applying the design on the snake end of the stave, I have to remember about following the grain. It's crucial for the longevity and durability of the weapon. Despite the crooked look, it will be still an efficient bow. Drawing each section, it's good to check if it's lining up good with the previous one, and if the grain is not being lost. Having it finished, it's time to move on to roughing out. Now I'm going to work a bit on the initial thickness reduction. You can see my favorite tools to use on this step right now. But don't worry, you don't need all this stuff to make a bow. To be honest, good solid knife alone is enough to finish such a project. I've proved it in my latest build along video. Check out the description to see it. Today I'm picking my bigger U hatchet. It's pretty heavy and good for removing larger chunks of wood. This stage requires exceptional care and concentration, not to hurt myself, nor to destroy the stave. For beginners, slower work is recommended as it usually comes with fewer mistakes. Okay, now I'm moving on to working on the sides. More precision will be required here. I'm gonna use a draw knife. After initial thickness reduction, roughing the sides will be much easier. During both designing and roughing, it's good to leave the tips slightly wider, as later the bowyer can narrow them to line the whole bow up more precisely. Despite looking relatively easy, this step requires a lot of energy and often can take a lot of time. Defects like knots have to be worked down carefully. The bowyer should not work against the grain, as it may result in lifting the grain, splitting off big chunks of wood, and damaging the stave. Roughing the handle section, it's good to cut the stopping groove with the saw first. It will prevent cutting into the fades and will give the bowyer more control. As you can see, the bow is still far away from target dimensions. To get closer to this quicker, I'm gonna use my trusty method. I'm marking the stint thickness on the whole length of the stave, and I'm cutting grooves with the saw, one groove per each 10 inches, judged by the eye. Then I'm using hatchet and a piece of wood to split off sections, one by one. It has to be emphasized that the thickness I'm chasing here still needs to be a bit over target dimensions. This method can be applied on nicely and straight grain staves. After splitting off the material, I pick the draw knife once again to put more work on the belly. If the stave is evenly grained, like in this particular case, the same amount of groove rings can be left on each limb. I'm counting them starting from the handle. It will be a pretty good start to tillering. Time to work on size a bit in order to chase these perfect lines. With each next step, more and more care and precision will be required. I'm using the draw knife to get an optimal width tapering. The tips can be narrowed at this stage too. Also, I'm checking if the width taper is the same on both limbs, as it will make the later stages easier. A bit more work has to be applied on fades too. The stave is almost ready for bending. To provide it the best start possible, I'm gonna do some pre-tillering. I'm investigating each lip precisely and removing wood from two fixed spots to make them evenly tapered. The more experienced the bowyer is, the more accurately he can do it. Once the limbs look pretty good, I'm picking a card scraper, as even less wood will be removed in the following steps. I'm smoothing edges and removing tool marks, as well as the remains of the previous groove ring on the back from the whole stick. The stave destined to become a bow can be bent now. I like to apply first bends having the stick clamped in the vise. With a bit of experience, all the stiff and weak spots can be noted right away. I'm scraping these in which the bow is not bending or bending not enough. The balanced bend on the whole limb's length is our goal. Now I can prepare the bow for the bowstring. I'm using rasp to carve string grooves. On this stick I'm applying simple self-knocks. Ashwood is pretty hard, and what's more, I'm not aiming for a very powerful bow, therefore no knocks reinforcement is required on this stick. Time to turn this stick into the bow. Tillering is a crucial part of the build. Properly bending and well-balanced bows make durable and long-lasting weapons. Lack of precision at this point may lead even to the breaking of the stick. The bow is landing on the tillering tree. I'm starting with long string tillering. I'm watching the bow bend from a few meters and looking for potential weak or stiff spots. Then I'm scraping them and again onto the tillering tree. After each correction, the bow can be drawn further and further. As you can see, the wonky tip on the bottom limb makes the bend looking faulty. All imperfections have to be taken into account while working on the bend. The key is to get balanced and even bend, not the perfectly looking one. A rule that should be obeyed during tillering tells that the bow shouldn't be drawn over the target draw weight. Once the bend looks quite balanced, the bow can be strung with the proper bowstring. Strung profile tells us a lot. It helps to note any profile imperfections. I ended up with approximately 30 pounds at 27 inches. That's what I was hoping for. The tiller isn't perfect, but it looks balanced. As you can see, there is a problem with strung alignment. I'm going to fix it, bending the handle to the opposite side. I'm marking the direction and putting the bow into the form. Then I'm hitting it with the heat gun. Once it's hot, I'm using clamps. After cooling down, alignment should be better. At this point, approximately 50 arrows should be fired from the bow. After this, the tiller has to be checked, and if it's alright, the bower can move on to final works. Final touches are left to apply. Firstly, I'm putting some work in the handle. I'm shaping it and smoothing the edges. Once it feels comfortable in the hand, I'm marking the arrow path point and burning it. The stiffer limb is the bottom one, as it's the one that is being under higher stress during regular use. Then I move on to sanding. I'm wearing a mask not to inhale the dust. It's good to use 2 grades of sandpaper at least. The attention should be paid to knocks. They have to be sanded especially well, not to cut through the bowstring. To protect the bow from changing weather conditions, it has to be sealed. Its main goal is to prevent wood from losing or gaining moisture content. I'm using water-based varnish today. Any kind of oils can be used too. The bow is finally finished. Now you will see both resting and strung profiles, as well as the weapon in action from different angles. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in comments. Also check out the link in the first comment if you'd be interested in learning bow making or just supporting my work by getting my ebooks. Thank you for watching guys, all the best.